additional comments to provide, your information again, you're welcome to leave those with me today. But please also, you can mail them in as well. There's an address already on the card. But feel free to please provide feedback, comments, whatever you like, questions, and we will work to respond to all of them. So, coming to my left here is the foundation process with the county. And sometimes this gets a little confusing because the foundation process opens up once every 8 years. So it's an 8-year cycle. It's not something that landowners can submit for at any time they want. It's only when the county opens up a window. That window opened in 2024. And we submitted an application to basically change the land use foundation for the property that is under ownership. And what I'm going to point out are the steps that will potentially move forward if this application is successful. We are at step number 1. We're still in the foundation general plan amendment application process. In fact, we are on bullet point number 3 currently. Many of you have attended the GPIP hearing, which was the very first hearing. We had a slight, pretty big different application, different land use vision for the property. We made changes. We heard the feedback. We made changes to the application twice, and I'll present that again here in a minute. We went through the Planning Commission, for those of you who attended that meeting. Again, heard some more feedback. Again, are making some additional changes. And lastly, we are waiting to be scheduled for the Board of Supervisors, which we thought was going to occur this month, but so far we have not been scheduled for the Board of Supervisors hearing date. We're expecting that to be maybe April, May, possibly as far as June, but we haven't received a date yet. So, if we proceed at the Board of Supervisors and the board deems our vision for the property something that they would allow to proceed, they'll approve us to submit an implementing project. So the implementing project in this case would be what our vision is and how we intend to make the vision real. And in our case, it's most likely would be a tentative track map for those of you who are familiar. That goes through its own normal process, and that's what I call the entitlement process. In here, this from steps 2 to 6 can take anywhere from 12 months to 24 months, and it all depends on what I call the environmental review process, and that takes a long time. So the point of this entire exhibit is to show that when we go back to the Board of Supervisors, we're not approving a project. What we are asking for is for the board to approve a vision to allow us to proceed to submit an application. If we are successful and we're able to continue to move forward, we'll have many more events like this. I'll be contacting Eleni more frequently, and we'll schedule most likely at least 2 or 3 outreach meetings to just have more detail. And I mentioned this at the last hearing. I'd love to have more detail and more, specific property information, site plans, those types of things. But that's just not the phase we are in right now. All we're producing is what we want to see in terms of the vision for the property, again, to allow us to move forward. So from step 1 all the way through step 6, probably approximately 12 to 24 months after we would get approval. In fact, we're required to submit a implementing project within 6 months. I know it says 12 here, but technically the county wants 6 months for a project like this, or a future project like this. I'll save questions for last in terms of the process. Now I'm going to switch over to what many of you have seen in the presentation. Some of these exhibits are familiar, some maybe not. So just focusing on the top portion here, and sorry if I'm in the way. I'll try to scoot back. What you see in the purple outline is the property owned by the applicant, Dr. Chaudhuri. It is 410 acres, and the FGPA process we are in right now, it identifies an existing land use foundation designation, which is rural foundation. There are 5 designations, and this property is designated as rural. The purpose of this exhibit is to show the properties in proximity to what we are proposing in our application currently, and that is to transition to rural community foundation. So our goal is to change the land use foundation to something that's similar in nature to the surrounding. And what that would allow the applicant to do is to propose a project that is different than what it is currently designated as. And I'll get into some of those details in just a moment. So, slide pulled from my last hearing, and this basically shows in one slide what we are proposing as far as the vision goes. What we want to propose is a rural community designation, and as a part of the rural community designation, we're proposing a equestrian residential community. And speaking with a couple of folks here tonight, I wanted to make clear what that means as far as like lot size and lot acreage, those types of things. Currently, the property has a subdivision on it today. Subdivision means, for those of you who are not familiar, that parcels are already designated on the property, and those are at 5 acres. What we're proposing in the rural community designation is that we would have a standard gross acreage average of 2 acres. Now, I say gross acre average because the rural community would allow us to be a little flexible on that, given the terrain, the hilliness, the access, those types of things. So we can cluster development, meaning we can cluster lots down to a smaller, I think a minimum of 1 acre, but we can't exceed a unit count of what would be designated per the rural community. So I know it's a lot of info, sometimes a little confusing, and be happy to answer questions when we're through here, but the overall vision for the property, rural residential, rural community, and what we're showing here in this vision is just some circulation elements. We're not showing a lot layout just yet. We're working towards that, and we want to get to that. And I'm actually going to go to the next exhibit because it's a little bit larger. So the vision right now would be approximately 2 acre plus or minus residential lots across the property. Now, for those of you who have been on the property, it's very hilly, lots of steep terrain. So we would want to try to strategically locate those lots and propose a home on those particular lots in areas where it would be easier to, say, grade. We don't want to come in here and grade the entire property. That's not a goal of ours. Our goal is to work with the terrain, work with the land, and find nice locations for equestrian estate homes. What we're showing in here is just a concept circulation where we would take access from Benton Road so that we have primary and secondary access back to the main roadway. And then we also want to preserve some of the existing roadways that already cut through the property. So you'll see us identifying some of those connection points. A little more difficult to see is with any residential project, we would want to also incorporate amenities. And amenities can be so many different things, and it really comes down to the detail on the second phase when we get into the implementing project phase. But ideally, we'd want to locate that kind of at the highest point of the property, and that's roughly in this location. And for those of you who've seen the presentation, that could be equestrian facilities, it could be day ride locations, it could be arenas for equestrian events. I'm from Norco, so I'm familiar with all the equestrian events that go on in Norco, and just generally what goes into planning for equestrian facilities, trails, those types of things. And we went ahead and put just some concepts, residential imagery here. The goal with this project, and while I wrap this up here, is to work with a large property that's very hilly, lots of flow lines coming through, preserving open space as much as we can, but also providing and proposing something consistent with the neighboring properties. So as I mentioned before, the other rural community, the 2 acre minimums, that's what we want to propose as our vision. And just one more time, what the Board of Supervisors, they're not approving this project, they're just approving us, allowing us to proceed into the next phase. They won't approve a project until, potentially 12 to 24 months later. After we've studied this, after we've done all of our technical studies, after they've seen a site plan, and well after I've seen you guys again at the next community meeting. So I will stop right there, and we will enter into some questions, and I'll do my best to answer. I don't have a ton of detail. What you see is what I have. But I'm going to start with the first hand I saw, black shirt.
Just down the road from us, there's a community called Barnett. They're at minimum 3.
It's running.
I understand that train very well. It's right outside of
Better fix the date on it. It says 22.
And if you do 2-acre lots, that's not consistent with the surrounding community. The surrounding community is 5 acres. Some are 10, but most are 5. That currently is approved with the county at 5. Why not just leave it at that? Put those nice equestrian homes there, and do your deal. We're good with that.